that problem. I was invited to come to this event, and there was no way I was going to say no. I'm so, and just for the planners at the James Madison Institute, I think this is such a wonderful opportunity. It's humbling when you're asked to share about yourself. I prefer to be the worker bee behind the scenes. It's not easy to put yourself out there and share. I would much rather hear about what each of you, what are you doing, and what's going on in your life, and how can I help? And that's my spirit. But it's something that you're going to have to learn how to do, and that is to set your priorities. And so the way I decided was mentorship is one of my life priorities. It was not easy for me to get where I am. I had to work my way through 8 years of school. In spite of my dad being an academic professor, single parents don't make a lot of money. So there were a lot of challenges, and I can share some of the things that I've learned with you. And so the mentorship is one on my priority list, but one of the things I encourage you to do, deciding what are you going to say yes to in your life and what do you need to say no to, is to start with a priority list. And you should have like a 1-year plan, a 3-year plan, and a 5-year plan. Those of you who are business majors, if you plan on running a business, you have to have a business plan. Well, I challenge you to have a personal life plan. And then you'll decide, okay, if you're asked to do something that's off plan, you have to kind of go back to your agenda for your life. If your agenda right now is to finish school and to do well in school, then if someone asks you to do something that takes you off task and it may challenge your ability to do well in school, then you're going to have to reevaluate it and talk to your mentors, talk to your family and friends who will serve as mentors. So I still do that. I still have a personal plan. And I challenge myself and sometimes you have to change those plans, but I think you need to do it in an organized manner.
Secretary Benson, you've served in so many different governmental roles, whether it be with state agencies or in the Florida House. I even read in the paper that you're thinking of maybe running for Attorney General coming up soon. How have you found that those instances have been different in serving with an agency or with a house or in another capacity, and how do you decide when it's time to take an offer given to you to be a part of a different part of government?
By the way, I don't think you're supposed to giggle when they talk about the Attorney General thing, right? And I know it's hard to support Republicans, but we do need good women lawyers in leadership positions. I have had just an incredibly lucky life. My parents told me you could be whatever you wanted to be when you grew up, so I believed them. And as I said, when I had the opportunity to run for the Florida House, I didn't know that the odds were against me, so I just set out and I knocked on the doors and I had my campaign message and gave my 3-minute, my 5-minute, my 10-minute stump speeches. And in the House, I had incredible opportunities. My speakers would ask me to chair committees that gave me incredible opportunities. They asked me to reorganize the court system and how it was funded. I had to think about how the state procures different goods and signs multi-million-dollar contracts. I got to serve as chair of the Health Care Council and worked closely with Governor Jeb Bush on health care policy. And then I was elected for a 4th term when Governor Christ called me up and they said, hey, we have these agencies. Which one would you like to choose from? And they sent me to one called the Department of Business and Professional Regulation. I have to admit, I didn't really know what they did. All I heard was complaints about them when I served in the House. But they licensed what they did. Your husband can tell you, they were, well, not so great. But we licensed 1 million different professionals across the state. We were responsible for alcoholic beverages and tobacco, hotels and restaurants, gambling, and then condos, land sales, and mobile homes just because we needed it. But I got to work with some incredible people, but mostly on an opportunity like that, I'll tell you. So I served there for 1 year and 2 months. And then one day I was down in the governor's office, and his chief of staff called me in, and they said, hey, the secretary of this other agency is leaving. Would you be interested in being in the short list? I was like, right, because I really loved the job I had. And 2 days later, the governor called me up and he walked me into his office and he said, so, secretary. I said, so, governor. He said, so, healthcare? I said, yeah. He goes, so you'll do it? I said, yeah. He goes, great. So really, when you, and now I find myself responsible for an $18 billion agency that serves 2.6 million Floridians who need Medicaid. So you never know when the next opportunity is going to present itself. But really, there was actually in this month's Florida Trend, Bob Martinez, former governor of Florida, said, whenever a window opens, you have to be prepared to walk through. And so all of these opportunities, you just take them. Whatever opportunity you're given, you make the most of it, and then the next one will appear, and then, it's just been a lot of fun. I don't know that I wish I could say I had plans for all those activities I joined or the jobs I took, but the nice thing is, it's always been a great adventure, so that's all I know.
Ms. Rasmussen, your experience is interesting in that you've been in both state and local government. How would you compare those two experiences?
Well, it's been helpful to have the perspective. Most of my life really was spent at the state level, in the state capitol. I worked in the Senate Appropriations Committee. I worked for the legislature in the House as an aide. And then with the governor and cabinet, when Bill Nelson was there as his director of cabinet affairs. So that's sort of the executive branch. So I did the legislative branch and the executive branch. And then, speaking of taking opportunities when they present themselves, some folks approached me about running for different things. Aren't you going to run for this or run for that? The legislature, the county commission. I said, I've got a full-time job and 3 children. And my children are 13 and almost 12 and 12, which means I'm going to have 3 in middle school next year, which means I'm pretty close to a nervous breakdown anyway. So why would I want to run for the legislature or the county commission and have to deal with all these, a plethora of issues that that just wasn't where I was at the time. But when the opportunity to run for the school board came along, it was an open seat, that was a perfect fit. Because I'm already working in education. I work with colleges and universities around civic engagement and civic education, which is a big passion of mine. And because I had worked in the state government, when back then, this is no longer the case, but back then, the governor and cabinet served as the state board of education. So they were, in effect, the super school board for the whole state. And so I'm doing a subset of that. I'm on the school board now for Leon County. And a big, big part of our challenge right now, with all due respect to everyone who's sitting up here, is funding. And I'll just give you a quick Tax 101 lesson real fast. The state of Florida kind of tends to put all of its eggs in one basket. We have for a number of years, even back when I worked in the legislature. And so when the economy is good, when everybody in the house is working and we're making good money and nobody's worried about losing their job and life is good, people go on vacation, they come to Florida, they buy Mickey Mouse t-shirts. When they buy the t-shirt, the sales tax goes into our revenue pot. It's called our general revenue. We were also growing and growing and growing. Everybody wanted to move to Florida. They were coming here. They were building houses. So we had a lot of growth going on. That means everybody's working because we're all serving these people that are coming. We're building their houses for them. Everybody's making money. Everybody's spending money. We had a good, strong, solid economy. Well, when the economy isn't doing so well and people are worried about losing their job, what's the first thing they quit doing? They quit going on vacation. No more Mickey Mouse t-shirts are being sold. No more sales tax in the coffers. And our growth went down and our property taxes became a big issue. And so what has happened in the last several years, the Leon County school system, just to give you an example, and I'm sure you've heard similar stories from whatever county you may be from, we are being funded now by the state legislature at a level that was back in 2007. We have had to cut, just since I've been on the board in the last couple of years, $35 million. And we've had to close down a school. And I guess to say to you, I'm not really answering the question probably exactly right, but it's all interconnected, and it's very helpful to me to understand, because I've been in the legislative process. I understand the difficulties legislators face in having to make choices and make priorities, and they're faced with declining revenues instead of stable revenues. I probably would respectfully disagree with some of them about how we might fix those tax policies to better put more money into education. I believe we're investing in education, and if we put our money there, we'll not have to put so much on the other end in things like prisons and other things, and we could close some of those tax loopholes that wouldn't be so painful for middle-class families. So that would be my own perspective. But I guess to tell you, although back when I worked up there, home rule was sacred. I mean, home rule was, you know, the closer the elected official is to the local public, the more sacred that was, the more important. And the further you got away, the less you ought to have to say. You know, that the local level ought to decide what it wants for its own community. And that's, I think, becoming less and less. We're seeing a lot more unfunded mandates, you know, where the state or the federal government will tell the local school boards, you have to do this and this and this, but we're not giving you any more money to do that with. And with the SCAT, for example, you have to teach this subject, this subject, this subject, but it takes a lot of the creativity away from your classroom teachers. They're stuck kind of in a box where they have to do certain things in a certain amount of time with a certain amount of money, and it